We've delivered on every single one of those pledges. Tell me any other government, Labour or Tory, that has managed to do that within a decade. This government has, under the leadership of Tony Blair. And that's why Britain today, after a decade of delivery, is far better. It just didn't happen by accident, as Tony reminds us, and every minister will surely tell you. It happened because the choices we made, difficult choices, controversial choices, they were the decisions that produced the changes for the better. I mean, look at Manchester and how it's changed. You know, in 1997 I visited here, where the heart of this city was ripped out by that IRA bomb. I took the decision on behalf of the government to approve £83 million of public funding, money that began the regeneration of Manchester, money that the Tories promised but never delivered. The people of Manchester will never forget that it was a Labour council working with a Labour government that made Manchester the modern European city that it is today. Conference. A decade ago, our cities were in a spiral of decline. High unemployment, rising crime, bad housing, poor school results. People were abandoning our cities. Not now. Labour policies have changed that. Thousands of new jobs. Yes, crime is down. Decent homes, school results are up. Cleaner, greener, safer, safe places to live. But take one small example of change that only a Labour government would do. The canals that you can see outside here in Manchester or any major city, many of them were the cities were the symbols of urban decline, a haven for people in burglary and crime. When we came to office, we changed it. Gordon changed the Treasury borrowing rules to allow publicly owned bodies like British Waterways and, yes, our local authority airports to begin to develop, to be more enterprising, to use the public-private partnerships and to unleash their full potential. They have become indeed major engines of growth in our urban regeneration. As a result, we have transformed derelict canals into flourishing urban centres. Walk outside and look at the Bridgewater Canal and then compare it to what it was 10 years ago. And that tale is true in every one of our major cities. So we transform these derelict canals into flourishing urban centres, profitable assets instead of decaying liabilities that the Tories left behind. We showed that public enterprise and public ownership can play a part in rebuilding our cities. And yesterday we heard in the debate, and don't forget the most deprived areas. Our New Deal formulas, our New Deal communities, like the one here in East Manchester, tackling in deprivation, tackling social exclusion in the most disadvantaged areas in our cities, in our country. But we did something extra to that. We gave the ordinary people in those communities the power and the money to decide their own decisions. We put faith in them, and they have delivered by improving their communities. But that's not just in Manchester. It's in all our great core cities. Birmingham, Sheffield, Leeds, Newcastle, Bristol, Liverpool and Nottingham, and the towns and cities across our country. And of course London, the greatest capital city in the world. Yesterday's debate emphasised the importance of the growth of cities. There has been much debate about this, and we should recognise when we talk of global problems of the massive urbanisation now taking place in this world, as countries seek to grow, to find houses for their people, to leave the rural areas to move in to urbanisation. That is going to have a profound global effect, and we've already mentioned it in some of the debates. Across the world, we are witnessing global urbanisation as never ever before. As I speak, believe me, China plans to build 1,000 cities like Manchester to deal with 10 million people leaving the rural areas and moving into our urban areas every year. Cities, bear in mind, as the debate showed, consume 75% of the world's natural resources. They produce 3/4 of its waste. Cities are major emitters of greenhouse gases contributing to climate change. But there are remarkable examples of what can be done if we put our mind and our commitment to it. Again, in China, the new eco-city of Dongtang, designed to be entirely carbon neutral, the most environmentally advanced city in the world, and it's being built in partnership with Britain, with our expertise in planning, in production, in construction and environmental protection. Together, both of us in China and UK, learning from the development in building brand new cities that meet the environmental requirement and the higher living standards for our people. Creating new employment here in Britain and trading opportunities for the United Kingdom, which Gordon referred to in his speech on Monday. So it's vital we continue to find a new way of providing these cleaner, greener, safer cities for people while tackling at the same time the great challenge of climate change at home and abroad. And it was in this very hall last year, this hall, that we, the Labour government, hosted an international summit on sustainable communities, where people from around the world gathered to address in this very hall the issues of climate change and, more important, to learn from the policies they'd seen being developed here in Britain by a Labour government. Climate change. It is undoubtedly the biggest environmental problem facing the world today. As David Miliband said in the debate, climate change is an economic issue, a social issue, a security issue, but it's also a political issue. Quite right. So we have to muster the political will for the priorities to tackle it. I'll give you an example, and all ministers will give you their examples. I was involved in the many arguments we had at the early days about congestion charging. I brought in that legislation. By God, it was controversial, I'll tell you. It's much more acceptable now. And it allowed congestion charging. I'm glad we had Ken Livingstone, a man with some courage. I've said other words about in the past, I agree. But he's had the political courage to implement it for the benefit of Londoners and help tackle the climate change in our capital city. You know, they said it wouldn't work. Now people come from all over the world to find out how it's done here in Britain. Now that's leadership provided by a Labour government and a Labour council to deal with the problems of climate change. In 1997, we recognised that we had to seek an international solution to climate change. We were aware that global problems require global solutions. We knew domestic policies on their own were simply not enough. And as the British negotiator, one of the proudest things I've done in my political life at Kyoto, I worked night and day around the clock to find an agreement. I can tell you it was a close-run thing. At 3 o'clock in the morning, on the final deal, the deal was about to collapse. It was this man, our Prime Minister, who rang President Clinton, who rang the Prime Minister of Japan, securing for the first time ever an international binding protocol on climate change. That's what we did. But hang on, there's a lot more. Not only did we lead the world on negotiating those Kyoto targets, but we're way ahead in meeting them. We're not only achieving the reduction of emissions by 12.5% now, not waiting till 2010, but we are now likely to exceed it, a doubling to 25%. Something no other country's done. We influence the international negotiations and we set the standards by implementing it ourselves. That was a major contribution of Britain in the early stages of climate change. But we have also done something else. And I'm proud to go around the world as ministers do themselves. And they look to Britain and they find we have done something that they warned us in 1997 that it couldn't be done. You could not have the cuts in greenhouse emissions and growth and employment. This country has shown you can meet Kyoto targets, you can have growth and high levels of employment. We exposed that myth that they were incompatible, and I think now being readily recognised at last, even in America. But that was only made possible by making difficult long-term decisions, controversial, much doubt about, but trusting your judgment and saying, this is right, we've got to go. You cannot be certain about whether you're right or wrong. By God, over my life, I've been often wrong and I've been often right, but you have to make your decision. I think there's a powerful line in Tony's speech when he said, sometimes you can't make your mind, you have to trust your judgment. And that's what decision's about. It's certainly what leadership's about, and that's what this government's been giving in the last decade. But these are long-term decisions, introducing the climate change levy. Now, I know that David Cameron did a photo call with the Huskies. The Tories now claim to be green. But we all know they oppose the climate change levy. That's the very policy that has achieved a huge reduction in Britain's emissions. That's the difference between making a decision. Conference, that is the difference between serious politics and clever marketing. Clever marketing. Not my words, Norman Tebbett's. Did you ever think I'd agree with anything Norman Tebbett said? I said to my mate Dennis Skinner last night, and by the way, wasn't it great to see Dennis back in the conference yesterday? Dennis reminded me that he dubbed Tebbett the polecat, and that was one of his more polite interpretations. And it was Tebbett who, during the Tory years of mass unemployment, told the unemployed to get on their bikes. I see David Cameron took that bit of advice anyway. He got on his bike, except he's followed by the car with a suit in the back. That may be called clever marketing. I call it Tory hypocrisy. You know, Conference, if David Cameron thinks that a photo shoot of him hugging a husky and adopting an oak tree for their emblem can fool the British people into thinking that the Tories have fundamentally changed, then he's barking up the wrong tree. And David, take my advice, don't let the husky near the tree. Conference, on Monday, Gordon spoke about the world's three great challenges, global challenges: terrorism and security, global economic competition, and climate change. Gordon, I believe there's another one, which is equally as important. It's people trafficking in the modern form of slavery. Nothing less than a global scandal. Cruel, wicked exploitation of men, women, and yes, children, by international gangs of organised criminals, exploiting people desperate to escape the shackles of poverty, so desperate they'd do anything to flee the horrors of their homelands, especially in Africa. And as we approach the 200th anniversary of the abolition of slavery in British Empire, it beggars belief that people are still bought and sold like cattle. It cannot be right. It cannot be right that 2 centuries after the Hull MP William Wilberforce campaigned for abolition, when even 20,000 working-class people in Manchester at that time signed a petition against this evil trade, that there should still exist in this world such an unforgivable horror of modern-day slavery. Now, we must recognise the special obligation we have to Africa, the continent most scarred by that pernicious slave traffic. And if it cannot be right either that in this new millennium people are still dying in their millions from want, disease, and particularly AIDS, and we should all be proud that Tony Blair set up the Africa Commission to raise the living standards in Africa, the world's poorest continent. But we should be proud also of Gordon Brown's tireless work to end the scandal of nations forced to use their precious national income not on providing medicine or schooling for their children or for clean water for their people, but to meet the interests of debts they could never, ever repay. As Nelson Mandela at this very conference told us that without Tony and Gordon working together, the world would not have sat up and taken notice of the tragedy of a modern Africa. President Clinton confirmed that yesterday. That's what makes us an internationalist party, a movement that recognises that solidarity does not end at our shores. That's the essence of our party. Conference, let me say this. Tony, I'm proud what you and I have achieved together. We've had robust debates, as you know, and from time to time we've had to agree to disagree. But Conference, I've never doubted this man's courage, his commitment and dedication to improving the lives of our people and safeguarding the interests of this country. That is the nature of Tony. He has given us an unprecedented period in office with 3 landslide victories and has achieved what no other Prime Minister has before him: economic prosperity and social justice within a decade. Millions of people are measurably better off than they were in 1997. Tony, we all know the greatest tribute we can make to your time in office is to find within ourselves the energy, the vision, the commitment, and yes, the self-discipline to win an historic 4th general election victory. Tony has told this conference this will be his last party conference as leader. This movement will be asked to elect a new leader after Tony has decided his timetable for leadership.